Relationship. We were talking about correct use of energy and relationships. And we left off talking about the importance of commitment in a relationship. Um, a lot of people are not making strong commitments these days. In the old days, people got married and it was very difficult to get a divorce. And now it's much easier, and a lot of people aren't even getting married and they don't make a strong commitment. But part of the reason they don't is they don't understand the importance of a commitment. Is the if the two need to be one, there has to be total trust. And say uh, you're in a relationship with someone else and you really kind of are committed to them, but you don't feel that they are committed to you, it lowers the level of trust. So the amount of energy shared will be minimal. Let me see, I need to put somebody on, somebody isn't on mute here.
That might have been me.
Oh, okay. Make sure everybody's on mute. So this commitment, which is stressed by all the prophets and wise teachers of the past, they've all stressed this, and they stress the importance of not breaking that commitment. The breaking of that commitment has always been considered a major sin, and is for a reason, is that the breaking of the commitment or a betrayal makes it very difficult to reestablish trust. And for there to be a complete sharing of energies, just on the romantic level of the solar plexus alone, there has to be a feeling that you can trust the other person. So when the two can make a commitment, they feel the other person, that you're committed to your mate and your mate is committed to you, then you can trust and you can share the solar plexus romantic type energies, the emotional self. You can share your emotional self, so you will not feel like you're in danger of being hurt. And there's, like we said last week, there's always some risk. So uh, that's always a problem to a degree. Now, so what a commitment does, it removes these barriers. And if the barriers are removed so you can share all your emotional self, then we come up to the higher energies of the heart, the spiritual energies, where it goes beyond what the self gets. The lower energies, you love the person because of what they do for you. I love you because you make me feel complete, and all of this type of thing. The higher energies is I love you and I want to make your life happy and better. And if both of them have that attitude, then they have a sharing that takes them to a dimension that is above the more selfish desire love. And this takes them to the point to where they can have a spiritual flow go into the relationship, so that they can um, be in contact with the soul together. It's like the two become one soul, because in the other world, all souls are said to be one. All souls are like linked together on like a spiritual internet. And so if you join your heart energies with your mate, then you can draw down inspiration and soul energy into your union, so the fulfillment can be greater. Now, those who have casual sex with no commitment, they create barriers of negative energy that militate against the full sharing of the heart, because they're afraid of being hurt. To prepare oneself for a full sharing, one must mentally accept the possibility of being hurt. and be prepared to deal with it when it comes. And but just dismiss the idea that you can be hurt from your mind and proceed as if, like I said, you're invulnerable. So the covenant, what the covenant does when you make a bond with the person, that creates stability, that removes the fears of sharing. And the next best thing is an understood agreement, but an actual covenant is most effective. So you have certain couples with an understood agreement, like uh, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. They've been together for a long time. They have an understood agreement. They haven't made an actual marriage covenant, but it's just kind of worked for them. But that doesn't happen very often. Usually, if the couple stay together, they wind up eventually making a strong bonded relationship. It solidifies the unity of the couple. Now, the energy of purpose must be sensed, and disciples must move toward it. There's no limitation in steps until a full union is achieved. For the relationship has to evolve beyond physical sex. If people are just staying together because of physical attraction, sooner or later that physical attraction fades as we aged. Like Ed isn't quite as good looking as he was probably 40 years ago, but he's still a pretty good looking guy. But but um, I'm not as good looking as I was 40 years ago. So all of us have the looks and the physical part of ourselves fade. And this is really kind of part of a teaching mechanism for us, because when two people are young, they fall in love, and often they fall in love because of physical attractiveness. And if they are truly become friends and share energy, then when that physical attractiveness begins to fade, they will still stay in love as much as before. If they're just focused on the physical side, then when the physical attractiveness begins to fade, then they begin to lose interest, then searching for maybe a younger partner or something like that. And this creates problems. So it's important that we look beyond the physical to the romantic, to the heart, and finally to the mind, and to sense a purpose. Sensing purpose is very important. And if the couple feels that their union has some type of purpose that's just greater than the individual, that will help them to stay together. And having children, that increases their sense of purpose. Having friends as a couple increases their sense of purpose. Being connected to other people that have spiritual soul contact, that increases a sense of purpose also. And so everything a couple can do, or an individual can do, to increase a sense of purpose brings you closer together to your mate, to your friends, to your spiritual group. And this is important. Disciple must follow purpose until the heart energies are open. And when they are open, he will value them more than the lower desire. The value of the higher must always be sensed and appreciated before it will be pursued. Very few people ever completely master desires as expressed through sex, money, and power, because these energies are directed towards separateness, selfishness, and these are strong indeed. To be mastered, all desire connected with these energies must be directed by the mind toward the greatest universal good that one's consciousness can comprehend. So sex is motivated by the lower desire nature, but the higher energies can be shared when the walls are removed. We have to remove the walls one by one. And when the walls are removed, then the person can step up to the higher energies. And then complete union eventually can take place. Okay, we have somebody off mute again. There we go. Now, the carnal person will seek money for personal satisfaction. The next step up is dedication to family. Finally, the spiritual person will dedicate to some purpose for the good of the whole, while seeing to personal needs, because personal needs always have to be taken care of. But because you're not good to anybody if you can't take care of yourself. So you have to take care of yourself, your family, and expand your horizons as you gain in strength. Power seemed like the easiest to control, but it's really the hardest. People think, boy, if I had power, if I was like president, I would do this and I would do that. And people always see themselves that if they have power, they would be a very benevolent person. But what happens when a person does get power? 9 times out of 10, they misuse that power. And if they have power to become a dictator, most people do become dictators. It's funny, like I read a book on Fidel Castro, and when he led the revolution to take over Cuba, everybody thought they were fighting for freedom with old Fidel. They thought Fidel was just a great guy. He had a strong personality and people just loved him, that worked with him. And then when he took over, all of a sudden he got all this power. Everybody felt betrayed because all of a sudden he turned into what, with just a very short period of time, he turned into a powerful dictator. Yet surprised everybody that was with him because they thought they were fighting for freedom. And then after they took over, everybody had less freedom. So that's just one example, but this happens again and again. People think that they can use power benevolently, and people trust others to use power benevolently, but very few can. This is why power, we need to be very careful.
And actually, that's
giving too much power to anyone.
What's happening here, isn't it, JJ?
What's happening?
Doesn't
where?
that seem like that's what's happening here?
What are you thinking of?
I said what you were talking about with power.
Yeah, there's a big dichotomy of power. Trump has his powers limited by all the resistance, and Congress has their powers limited by Trump. And then fortunately, with our system, we have 3 centers of power that are at odds with each other. So
they balance each other.
None of them can be a total dictator. There's a lot of people who would like to be, especially we see more evidence.
I'm not. I'm not pointing the finger. I'm just saying that the exact thing you said about Fidel Castro appears to be happening now with these politicians or whatever, but it's the same routine. Like I said, I'm not saying who's bad and I don't care about that. I'm just saying it follows history. Like that's what's happening now.
Yeah, right. And yeah, and this virus, as I point out in my article today, is an excuse for politicians to grab more power. Everybody's grabbing all the power they can from this virus. And after it goes away, the fear of many is that the extra control given to the politicians, they won't want to give up. They like that. They like the idea of being able to control the people. And so we're going to have to do everything we can to make sure that we maintain a good level of freedom. So after the heart, the next is the mind. The mind is an interesting thing because people think they have a meeting of the minds, or they think that if they agree on several things, then they're one in mind. But complete oneness in mind is very rare. It doesn't happen very often. About the only entities that understand the oneness of mind are the masters themselves. One master with another will share his mind with the other master, so they have a oneness about them that is above what we can comprehend. And so we just get tastes of what true mental union on a spiritual level will be like. And remember, the soul itself, the soul body, is created of higher mental matter. And so the mind energy has to be mastered in order to for the disciple to have the oneness with the mind. The same thing with the lower emotions have to be mastered and put under control in order for the heart energies to be able to dominate. And then the heart energies must be directed by the mind for the soul to be the complete master of the self. And then the mind itself must submit to a higher level still, which is the intuitive world. And the intuitive world sends impressions down to the mind. And if the mind accepts them and incorporates them, then the mind can begin to dominate. Now, so the meeting of the minds is very important.
In real estate, you have to have a meeting of the minds. In business, you have to have a meeting of the minds, where you see eye to eye, you understand exactly what's happening in law.
Yeah. Right. And like I say, what we call the meeting of the minds on our level is like lower level mental energy, where you, if you have a successful business, you have a number of people working together, or a successful group, and they blend a certain amount of mental energy. But then when the blending takes place on a higher level, it incorporates what we call the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is sometimes called the mind of God itself. So when the higher mental energies begin to blend, then it draws down the power of the Holy Spirit. So the entity will feel that high energy of spiritual life begin to flow through him and enlighten his whole being. Now, the carnal person will seek money for personal gratification. The next step up is, like say, the family, and then to master power. And after power is mastered, then the person needs to sense purpose. And if he senses purpose, then it goes beyond money, power, and sex, so to speak, in the fact that purpose is very closely connected with what we call faith. It's interesting that many of the words given in the Bible are different than we interpret them today, like repent, faith, sin. All those words had a different meaning back then than are used by the preachers today. For instance, people think faith today is to just believe something that you have no foundation for. if you say, well, why do you believe in Jesus? He says, well, I just believe, just because I believe. Okay, he doesn't have a reason, maybe, he just believes. Okay, but the true meaning of faith in ancient times in the biblical Greek is to visualize something in your mind and then proceed toward that to prove whether or not the idea that is in your mind is true or false. So true faith is a method of proving whether something is real or not real. If it's not real, whatever the case, if you are taught something and then you exercise faith, you will prove whether or not that teaching is true or false. And when you've done that, you have exercised faith according to the way that the original Greek pistos, if I remember correctly, is defined. Now, with the right use of power, and the right use of power is a key to unlocking doors to purpose and many other things. The person will not seek it at the expense of others, but to serve others. He must remember the injunction of Christ that he who is greatest in the kingdom of heaven is a servant of all. And that's the keynote of true right use of power. And DK tells us that a person really can't be trusted until he reaches the third initiation. In the third initiation, you come to a realization of the keys that unlock illusion. So you're not trapped by illusion. And this is what causes a misuse of power, is illusion. The person gets power and he thinks, well, I know what's right for everybody and I'm going to throw out commands and straighten everything out. And this is illusion. That he's an illusion that he's able to do this. And so the person needs to escape illusion before he can exercise power with justice. This is why the masters do not trust anyone until they escape illusion. So a person can go through the first two initiations. The first initiation is the birth of the Christ within the heart. This happens when the person has some type of spiritual experience that directs his attention toward the path. So he begins to take the path and he begins disciplines where he controls the physical, and he begins to master the things connected with sex and diet and physical health and things like this. And then the next is where he overcomes, controls his emotional self, to the point somebody can insult him out the yin yang and he doesn't have to get angry or retaliate, because he can just let it pass through him no matter what is happening. And once a person reaches this stage, he can be a very good, dedicated person, totally dedicated to serving Christ, to serving God, to serving his fellow men. But if he is trapped in illusion, he can still go astray, because he can be thinking he is doing right when he's doing something very destructive if he's trapped in illusion. And illusion is a very powerful tool and very hard to escape. And it takes a lot of self-examination for the disciple to see through all the illusion that can deceive him. So there are many people that really want to do good, but because they're trapped in illusion, when they get power, they will still turn into a dictator. You know, it's quite possible that Stalin and Hitler had good intent. You know, they were trying to do what's right, but they were an illusion, and that caused them to do a lot of damage. And so This is this is important, that the disciple is able to penetrate the barriers that create fogs that can be lifted. And there's no easy way to tell anyone how to do this. It has to be done by trial and error, through pain and learning and struggle, to fight, as DK says, to fight into a greater measure of light than before. And it takes a tremendous struggle for the disciple to get there. And then once the disciple reaches a point to where illusion is basically dispelled, where he can't be tricked into taking a path that is destructive, then he can be trusted. And until he reaches that point, the masters may look down on the disciple and think, you know, the guy's got good intent and everything, but we can't trust him yet. But then he eventually does reach that point to where he can be trusted, and that's important. And this is important that we do this with each other, that we reach a point in a relationship where we can trust each other. We may not be high initiates, but we can reach a point to where we're committed and we can trust each other, beginning with your mate and extending to your friends, your spiritual circle. It's important that trust be developed. As Leonardo da Vinci said, to be trusted is greater than to be loved.
I thought Harold B. Lee said that.
Well, a lot of people repeated it, but I think Da Vinci was
Da Vinci
the
said
first.
that?
I believe so. I've heard his name associated with it. It seemed like I looked it up one time and couldn't find for sure who's originated that. But the first time I heard it, the person said it was Da Vinci, so I don't know where he got that from. So all disciples must master the three energies of sex, money, and power, and subject the solar plexus desires concerning them to the power of the mind, or else they will be damned. That's what being damned is. Being damned is to stop your progression. If your progression is stopped, then that's what true damnation is. And the Christian world, of course, thinks being damned is being thrown down to the fires of hell. And in a way it is, we do suffer the fires of hell if we are our own worst enemy, and we create our own blockages, and we don't know how to get out of it. And when this happens, it is frustrating as the fires of hell, so to speak.
It creates a feeling of anguish.
Right.
Anguish.
JJ, can I just jump in just a moment and say, in Eastern thought would posit that if there is a hell, considering the workings of karma, Earth is the hell, because this is where you get your corrections. This is where the lessons are. So
right.
that's
this
one
is a true hell. And can you think of a worse hell than being born in North Korea?
But, well, of course, it's all a matter of what the experience is needed and what would fit your progression the best. But you were talking about a mind, higher mind. Well, you were talking about kama manas is the lower mind. That would be the level of attachment and wrong use of attachment to sex, money, power, and all that glamour and that level. But then buddhi manas is what would connect you to that higher realm, that you would learn to perhaps act in a more humanitarian way. But that's what needs to be done, I guess.
Yeah. So it's important. An important principle behind all this is the higher can control the lower, but the lower cannot control itself. The lower cannot master itself. The physical body cannot master the physical body. It takes the consciousness of emotional consciousness and higher to take control and direct the physical body. The emotions cannot control themselves. The mind has to control the emotions. So the mind says, okay, emotions, I'm going to subject you to my control. I'm not going to let you get too angry today. You know, I know you want to get angry over this and that, but I'm not going to let this anger get out of hand. I'll let you get a little bit angry, upset, but I'm setting a limit on how angry you can get. So the mind can control the emotions, but the emotions cannot control themselves. And the same thing with the mind. The mind cannot control itself. The mind has to be controlled by the intuition, because the mind left on its own will reach a dead end. And when the mind is left on its own, it reaches a dead end and the person becomes an atheist, a non-believer in the higher realms, because the mind cannot see, the regular mind cannot see the higher worlds, cannot understand them, cannot find definite proof there's a God or anything. So what happens is the mind slays the real. And when it's left on its own, the mind slays the real. What does that statement mean to you? Let's have somebody comment. What does that mean? The mind slays the real. Who wants to answer that?
So in The Voice of the Silence, it said that that the mind is the slayer of the real. Let's slay the slayer, meaning that the mind creates your mind creates Maya, illusion, and that's your day-to-day consciousness. So the goal would be to get around that, to slay that with the true awareness of what.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And the real, in speaking of your awareness, the real is to be God conscious, because there is no place where God is not. But if the mind can't see that, then it slays what is real, which is that there is no place where God is not, so that you're really a God conscious intelligence. And that comes from your intuition and your knowing from a higher place than the mind.
Right. The typical hardcore scientist has the mind slay the real. He studies what he sees and he studies the laws of the universe, but a lot of these scientists refuse to believe in God and spirit and the life after death. And so their mind has slain these realities to their consciousness. In other words, the mind has concluded there is no God, there is no afterlife, there is no spirit. There's only what he can see through his eyes, through a telescope or a microscope, and that's pretty much it, or register with some instrument. And so the mind has slayed the real, and what happens to this person is he goes through a number of lifetimes in this situation, and he keeps reaching dead ends, and he gets more and more frustrated until he finally begins to think out of the box. He begins to question. He says, well, if there's a God, show me, and he begins to say stuff like this. Or he gets in situations where he has a lot of pain and he looks up at the skies and he says, why God? And the image, the idea of something beyond physical reality keeps coming into his mind, and he starts to consider it. And then he begins to get a flash of inspiration. And when he gets that first flash, which is different than the guy that's the normal believer in a religion. The believer in religion is not as advanced, not always, but often he's less advanced than the atheist. The atheist in past lives was normally a strong believer in religion one time or another, but he's left that behind. He got frustrated with it. He's focusing now on the mind. The mind has slain the real. He used to believe in God in past lives. Now he doesn't, because the mind has slayed this belief. And now he's reached a point of frustration that he begins to reach out, and he reaches to spirit in a way that he never did before when he was religious in past lives. He gets a flash of true intuition, and it's so subtle and so small, the still small voice, that he's not sure if he imagined it or not. And as he follows it, he finds that, yes, there is a greater spirituality, and his eyes begin to open to a dimension that he has never seen before. And then he begins to open up, and then he becomes, he follows the true path, which will take him back to the spiritual presence. So the meeting of the minds is important, and this is but first of all, the mind has to be subject to the higher world of the intuition. So the mind cannot solve the problem by itself. The mind does everything it can. It solves all the mysteries. It studies science, and it still can't figure out the mystery of being. It needs help, and it finally gets help from the next level up, from the soul, through the power of intuition. He gets these flashes, and he follows this intuition, and this intuition sets the mind on the course of the real, and proves again to the disciple that the lower cannot control itself. The lower needs to be in touch with the higher to master itself.
Isn't they say you can't solve a problem from the same level that you created it?
Yeah, I've heard that before. That's a good point.
You have to raise
Yeah,
up.
I heard, just going above the worry belt and looking at your problem from above down. It's just a saying, but
Yeah.
it's apt.
So once a mind gets under control, then the disciple has opportunity to share with other minds. And once this happens, once he gets a sense of the intuition, he also picks up thoughts from other people's minds. He maybe with his friends, his associates, his mate, he finds he picks up more subtle communications from them that he ignored before. And so these are all steps in creating mind to mind. Now, up to now, the complete union of minds usually occurs between a master, such as the Christ, and a dedicated disciple. This is sometimes called the second comforter, which is mentioned by Jesus when he said these words: I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. But ye know him, for he dwelleth in you and shall be in you. So this comforter is through the instrumentation of the soul, that when the person masters the energies of mind through higher spiritual levels, then he can receive a comforter, which is really a powerful link to his own soul, which is like being linked to Christ, because your soul has a similar consciousness to the Master Christ himself. All souls are linked together, and Christ is linked to all souls. Now, the Christ mentioned this principle once again. He said this: behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and sup with him and he with me. Okay, so the Christ himself says that if we open this door, he will actually come into us. And what happens then is you will share the mind of Christ. Okay, and if the disciple is able to share the mind of Christ, this will be a tremendous experience for him. But then the next step up is to share minds with other disciples. And this is something that the masters, two masters can share a mind, like kind of like the Vulcan mind melt might be the closest thing on TV to it. But two masters can share a mind, but two individuals that are not masters, it's extremely rare. They share the tip of the iceberg of the sharing of the mind. And this is one of the things that a group relationship needs to set as a goal, is the sharing of the mind, so we can sense minds of other people that we're close to in a spiritual group. And eventually a whole molecule of 24 will be able to share minds so that they will be as if they are one mind. And this is something the masters are able to do that we want to, say, duplicate on earth as it is in heaven. And so that's something to look forward to. Okay, any other comments or questions before we sign off here?
I have a quick comment on something you said earlier about we've all aged in the last 20 years since we've met up, and
Yeah,
I'd have to agree.
it's amazing how fast time's gone.
I have to agree with one exception. Annie West, she still looks as young as the day I met her.
Yeah, she does. She hasn't aged hardly at all. It's amazing.
Immortal cutie.
Some of us others have aged, we can sure tell the difference, but we ought to see a picture of Ed 20 years ago, see if he's aged at all. You have any old pictures? You have any old pictures of you, Ed?
I have one that comes to mind right now.
Yeah, show us next meeting. Why don't you show us a picture of how you looked 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and that'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, overall the group is aged, held out pretty good. But
We'll have to activate that rejuvenation gene we're all carrying around.
yeah.
When Annie showed up at the first gathering, I saw her coming across the parking lot. When she got to me, I gave her a big hug and picked her up, and she was so light. I told her she could skip the walking on water lesson that day.
Yeah, I know. She's about the lightest person I've ever seen. I think she feels really light just because she's close to the spirit.
Hey, JJ, is the being of one mind similar to of one mind and like spoken of in the scriptures? Or is it something different?
Well, the scriptures say several things in that connection. That says if you're not one, you're not mine, for instance, is one of the things you might be thinking of. But yeah, the scriptures point out the importance of being one, but the main scripture that is referring to this principle I'm talking about is where Jesus says that I and my Father are one, and it's his will that we be one as they are one. Okay. Now imagine you and me being one as the Christ and his Father are one. Visualize the oneness that the Christ and the Father have between them. And he says we're supposed to have that same thing between us. And that's pretty fantastic when you think about it, because the oneness of extremely advanced beings like the Christ in the Ancient of Days would be pretty fantastic to be able to tap into that. And so the scriptures also speak of a oneness where we're just unified. That's a different thing. But unification is an important step on the path to total oneness. But the total oneness is to be one as the masters and higher entities are one. And that oneness is where the consciousness is actually shared, is where your mind and their mind is like one mind.
Like a mind meld.
Yeah, like
But that can only happen
mind meld.
in a state of innocence where, you know, you have overcome any desire to withhold yourself from another soul. So you have to kind of be like a transparent soul.
Yeah, like I said, all these barriers, we got so many barriers that we have to remove, from the physical, the emotional, the mental. And then when all these barriers are down between you and your associates, then you have the opportunity for the great merging. Christ and his Father have no barriers between them. And thus they're able to share consciousness.
Right.
So could you say they're of one heart and of one mind, like, or is it not the heart, it's just the mind, or is it both?
Well, the oneness of heart precedes the oneness of minds. Okay, you have the oneness, first of all, on the emotional level, which is the romantic energy. Two people in love are like while they're still in love, before they get to know each other well enough to argue and have a lot of fights, they may feel a oneness on the emotional level. And then the next step up is a oneness on the heart level, which is the higher Christ type love. And then then when that is mastered, then they can go up to the higher mental sharing, which has to be controlled by the intuitive link to the soul and the higher self, the Christ consciousness.
Yeah, we have a ways to go, looks like.
Thank you for sharing, JJ. And when you said that, I thought, wow, that's totally possible. I mean, like, you know, to perceive someone else's needs or thoughts, or to, you know, to be one with them. I think I've experienced a little bit of that, and so I know it to be possible to be of one mind. And like you said, I like how you say the heart, being of one heart, comes before that.
Right, we all get glimpses of the road ahead. As we go through life, we will get flashes or glimpses and or feelings that are higher. And our soul, sometimes our soul has a lot to do on its own level, so it doesn't spend a lot of time just sending us messages, but it'll look down on us now and then and think, well, he needs kind of a shot in the arm to kind of give him encouragement. So it will send us something that will give us a glimpse of what is in store for us if we stay on the path. And then that glimpse is enough for many of us to just keep moving forward. And so we need these things. And most of us, if you reflect on your life, you receive something every now and then that give you encouragement to continue on the path back home. Okay, my friends, you've been a good group today, and we.
AJ, regarding the oneness thing, unless you want me to ask it later.
Go ahead.
Would it really be possible for the Ancient of Days and the Christ to have a total oneness given the disparity in evolutionary development?
Yeah, if as long as the vibration, long as the Christ can withstand the higher vibration, you know, he can, he can sense the mind of the. It's like it says in the scriptures that the Christ if you open the door, if you knock on the door long enough and with enough persistence, the Christ can actually, the Christ entity or an entity like Christ can actually come into your body and share his mind with you. And you're quite a bit lower than he is, than this entity. And you're a lower vibration.
But I mean, in the
but you're able to increase that vibration up to his level for a period of time.
but like in the book where you described that where Joe gets overshadowed by the Christ, he
Yeah.
said that what is it, like things were concealed from him, like, you know, there was a oneness, but there was also, like, you know, he didn't experience everything that the Christ was
Right.
going on.
What's shared is the consciousness, not all of the thoughts of the other being may not be revealed. So say the Christ and the Ancient of Days share minds. The Christ will tap into his consciousness, but not everything, not all of his purposes, not everything that he has planned, the type of thing. And the same thing with if a higher entity comes and shares consciousness with you, you will share its consciousness, but not all the details of what's going on in his mind. He'll, with the, I believe there's kind of a prime directive is you're able to keep to yourself anything you want to keep to yourself, no matter how great the sharing is. If you want to keep certain things to yourself, you're allowed to do that. And
That's good.
but
I have a question.
sharing consciousness itself is a little bit different than just sharing thoughts. Okay. Yeah,
Thanks.
Curtis.
On the 19th, are you totally committed to the? My wife has an eye surgery on the 19th of
Oh,
this
does she?
month.
Well,
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to drive her, and it's gonna be awkward for a day or two. She's getting cataracts removed.
let me see the dates again here. Yeah, 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Get her a Lincoln instead of cataract.
Are you going to be occupied for just one day or a couple days?
I don't know. At least one. Maybe.
Well, we'll have
Maybe we
we'll have a 3-day period. So if you could do like Friday, or if it's awkward, we could delay it a week.
Okay, well, I'll have to see. And it's just one day. That would be fine. I know she's. Or we could put her in the healing circle and bring some energy and.
Yeah.
Curtis, it's
Yeah.
my experience is that it's, you know, the day of the surgery, you have the surgery, but then the next day you got to go back to the optometrist because he's got to take the patch off and, you know, you have to check the eye out. So it's going to be 2 days in a row, I believe.
My wife only had to go in one day.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Let
what
me
they
find
told-
out.
That's
Let me
what they
find
told
out.
me. I have to see the eye surgeon the day after it's done, and he said I could drive there. So that's what he said. He said that most people can drive the day after the surgery.
Huh. I don't think my wife went back for another week or so after when she had hers. So maybe the different doctors do it different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me find out.
Yeah. Find out who's doing it, Curtis.
Some guy in Boise from the. I don't know. I don't have his
Might-
number in front of me.
Might be the same one that did my wife.
Could be
Yeah.
through Hollingshead.
Yeah. I
did
think
she
that
go
might be
through
the same one. I
Hollingshead?
can't remember for sure.
I'll
Okay.
find out the next day or so and let you.
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. If it's really awkward, we could move it ahead a week.
Okay.
But okay. Let me know as soon as you can.
Will do. I'm on it.
Okay. Okay, people, it's been a great meeting with you, and we will see you next week. I was thinking of doing, since it's kind of awkward for the people in Australia, we have, they maybe felt a little ignored by us because their time zone is awkward. I was thinking maybe doing it next week about 7 o'clock my time. which would be, I think, in the middle of the day in Australia. Is that, so if anyone has any objection to that, let me know, and we will
Sounds great.
see
That's
you
9
next
o'clock
week.
on the East Coast.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
7 a.m., 7 a.m. Boise, Idaho, and 9 a.m.
oh,
New York,
No, it's,
9 a.m.
no, it's
Next
at 7
Sunday.
it'll be 7 p.m. Sunday.
Yeah, so it'll
Oh,
be 9
PM, PM. I thought you said that. Oh, PM. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week then.
Hey, great class.
Yeah.